Hello everybody, what's up, what's going on? By the way, I'm MMA and today we're going to be debating. Yes, this video is going to be like a little comparison about which is the better choice for you to visit or move to, and that is Japan or South Korea. There is 10 different things that we're going to consider in this debate, and without further ado, let's start. I kind of made this video so that people who are kind of wondering which is better to visit, if you're planning a trip anywhere, or even if you're just curious about it, which one would be best to go to. So the first thing you would need to consider is quite obvious, and that would be your own interest. Do you watch anime? Do you like J-pop? Do you watch K-dramas? Do you like K-pop? I think that makes it quite an obvious one. But if you're watching this video, it's clearly because you do one or the other, or maybe both. So that point's maybe not that helpful. Nevertheless, it's still something that you should definitely be considering. Point number 2 is the weather. If you are somebody who really hates rain, I'm going to recommend straight off the bat, you go to Korea. Because even though the rain in Japan is very nice, as I talked about in my other video, top 10 things that I miss about Japan, it almost never rains in Korea. I lived there for a year and it rained about under 20 times at least. I live here in England, it rains like 20 times a day. I'm not even kidding. Like, it rains that little in Korea that it's something that you don't really have to consider so much. So if you don't like the rain and you want clear skies and quite good weather most of the time, then I would definitely say go to Korea. Now, the third thing that you want to be considering is food. One of the most important things when you're traveling, one of the things that you're definitely going to be doing is eating, right? So you need to consider what kind of foods you like. If you like snacks, I'm going to say you should go to Japan. They have huge varieties of snacks, and as I talked about in the video, again, top 10 things I missed about Japan, go check that out. I waffled on for like 10 minutes about Kit Kats. I hold my hands up, I admit it, okay? But there are so many different kinds of snacks in Japan that you will always have something really good to eat. In Korea, on the other hand, there is lots and lots of delicious food. However, their snacks are kind of below average. If you like spicy food, I would say go to Korea. Lots of food in Korea is really spicy. If you like cheese, there's lots of things in Korea that are covered in cheese. If you like meat, go to Korea, because nearly everything that you get in Korea has meat in it. It is difficult, but not impossible, to be a vegetarian or vegan there. But if you're just traveling, you're gonna find it more difficult than if you're living there. And so I would say it's probably easier to find vegan and vegetarian options if you go to Japan. I've been to both of these countries with a vegan person, and let me tell you, it was miles easier finding vegan places to eat in Japan. If you are a vegan or vegetarian visiting either of these countries, I would recommend that in South Korea you visit Plant in Itaewon, which is a cafe where they sell cakes, coffees, burgers, and like other kinds of vegan food. If you're in Japan, I would recommend looking at some of the ramen places in Akihabara in Tokyo where they sell vegan ramen. And also, no matter where you are in Japan, you can find a Koko curries or Koko Ichibanya where you can find vegan and vegetarian curries. The fourth thing that you're going to need to consider is the landmarks. Now, both countries have very equally impressive landmarks, so it's just a matter of which you would prefer to see. Would that be Tokyo Tower? Not really that impressive, or Seoul Tower. The fifth thing that you're going to want to consider is how long you're staying there for and if you're going to be taking any day trips. Now, Japan is absolutely massive and you would have to be staying there for a substantial amount of time or have a substantial amount of money to be able to go to all the different places that you might want to visit, be that Tokyo, Osaka, Okinawa. You know, there's so many different places in Japan that it's almost impossible to do them all in one short trip. It's quite expensive to get from one end of the country to the other, or even to another island within the Japanese peninsula. But there are several different types of day trips that you could do, be that to another nearby city. So for example, if you're in Osaka, going to Kyoto for the day, or going to Universal Studios, or if you're in Tokyo, spending a day or two at Disneyland. On the other hand, if you go to Korea, then it's more than likely you'll be staying in Seoul for the majority of your trip. And from Seoul, you can book a day trip where they pick you up at your hotel or your Airbnb or a nearby location, and they take you to the DMZ, or the demilitarized zone, where there are places that you can stand and look out over North Korea, which is pretty awesome. And Korea is much smaller than Japan, which means that getting around it, although it's a little bit expensive, it's much easier to get to other cities in a short amount of time. So it can take you only 2 hours to get to Busan, and you could have a weekend away there. I've done that before when my mum came to visit me for a week. We took a weekend trip to Busan for her birthday. Or you could take a flight to Jeju Island for a couple of days. I've also taken many day trips to areas around Seoul, such as Chuncheon, Incheon, Bhutan, or Suwon. The sixth thing that you're going to need to consider is how much money you've got and how long you're going to be spending there. If you have more of both of these, I'm going to say travel to Japan. You'll have more time to explore the different areas in Japan and also more money to be able to move around in Japan and experience all the different things that the different areas have to offer. If you don't have a lot of money or a lot of time, then I would recommend visiting Korea. It's much cheaper living or staying in Korea. The transport is cheaper, the food is cheaper, everything is just, from my experience, a lot cheaper in Korea, be that in Seoul or any other city. The seventh thing that you're going to need to consider is theme parks and what you like to do for fun. If you're an adrenaline junkie and you like theme parks, if you want to go somewhere and go to a good theme park and be like, oh yeah, I did this on my holiday and I did that and I did this, definitely 100% go to Japan. Please don't go to Korea if you want to visit a theme park. In Japan, you know, you've got Tokyo Disneyland and Universal Studios, and whilst both of them are fairly expensive, they have some really big, really fun rides to go on. So you're going to have an extremely good time, you're going to be able to spend the whole day there, and your adrenaline is going to be through the roof at both of those theme parks because I know that they have some amazing things there. Whilst I haven't been to Tokyo Disneyland, I have been to Universal Studios Japan, and they have an awful lot of extremely fun rides. On the other hand, the famous theme parks in South Korea are not quite as big or anywhere near as impressive as the ones in Japan. The main ones are Everland and Lotte World, and having not been to Everland but been to Lotte World, with that being one of the biggest theme parks there, I can say that compared to Universal Studios or, you know, Disneyland, or dare I say like even a British one like Alton Towers or Flamingo Land, it's like, you know, it's not quite, it's good. It is really good, it is really aesthetic, it is a really, really, really fun day out. However, the rides just aren't quite as exhilarating. There is like one big ride at Lotte World. One. And the eighth thing that you're going to want to consider, kind of tying into that, is what you like to do for fun. Now, if your idea of fun is going out shopping and going to pretty little cafes and taking nice pictures for Instagram, definitely 100% go to South Korea. They have the most aesthetic cafes and the most aesthetic clothing shops, and so many of them that you're going to be absolutely spoiled for choice there. If on the other hand you're a bit of a thrill seeker and you need to be doing something at all times, be that going to a theme park or going to an arcade, then absolutely go to Japan. Whilst both countries offer these things, some of them are just better, you know, where they are. So I'm going to say the theme parks and arcades are way better in Japan, and in terms of shopping and cafes, that's all way better in South Korea. The ninth thing that I want to talk about is the language. So that's kind of if you speak the language or not. It doesn't really matter if you do or do not, because you can cope in both. And it's kind of difficult for me to get an unbiased opinion on this because I speak enough Korean to get by. However, I don't really speak any Japanese. Now, if you don't speak any language, it's much easier to get by in Seoul than it is in Japan, be that Tokyo or Osaka, without any Japanese. There's been many times where I've walked into a cafe or a restaurant or a shop and tried to speak to somebody in Korean, and they see that I'm white and just go, I'll speak to you in English. And I'm there like, dude, I'm here to study Korean, help me learn. And they're just like, hello. And I'm like, annyeong, bitch. Anyways, I'm going to stop winding myself up over that. So things are more accessible if you only speak English in Seoul than they are in Japan. Nevertheless, if you really want to go to Japan, I'm not saying like, oh, don't, because you won't be able to cope, they don't speak any English. You can get by. I'm just saying that if that's a deciding factor for you, it's probably more comfortable for you in Seoul than it is in Japan. And then the 10th and final thing is the history. There's all sorts of different aspects and layers to the history, and if you're a bit of a history geek, kind of like myself, then there's many different things that you might want to visit in both of the countries. Whether that's the Korean War Museum, or the demilitarized zone at the border between North and South Korea, or if you want to visit any of the fancy temples in Japan. Both of them are absolutely excellent locations to go to see some history. And although I am obviously very biased, both of these places offer their own unique things, and they're both really lovely countries. And if you want a little bit more information about either of these countries, have a little look at the two videos I did, one of which is the top 10 things I miss about South Korea, and the other one is the top 10 things I miss about Japan. I will link both of them down in the description box below, so go watch one of them, see if either of them stands out a little bit more to you. I hope you enjoyed this video. Leave me a little like if you did. A thumbs up would be much appreciated. Subscribe if you want more content about Korea, Japan, China, Asia, whatever. I don't really know. I don't even know what I'm making tomorrow. I don't even know what next week's video is at this point. I'm so sorry. So subscribe for any of that, or even if you just like me. Let me know down in the comment section below if you've been to either of these countries and which one you preferred, or if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them for you. By the way, I've been Emily May, and I hope you all have a really fun and happy day. Bye guys.